Today we are working on 3-1, which is solving two-step equations. We're going to jump into some examples right away. So taking a look here, first example says solve 13 equals y over 3 plus 5. First thing we're going to do here when you start solving equations is draw a line through the equal sign. So that's going to be my biggest ticket as you work through here. This will help you to make sure that you are doing whatever you do one side of the equation, you're doing it to the other side. So taking a look, first thing we're going to do here is subtract 5. Why are we subtracting 5? You're going to find out as we work through these problems today that we're doing the opposite. So this is a add 5, so we are going to subtract 5. Whatever you do one side, you got to do the other. Now, next thing we do is we're simplifying. So what's 13 minus 5? Well, that's 8. And then over here, 5 minus 5 is really 0, but we don't write the plus 0. So we have 8 equals y over 3. Now I need to continue to get this y by itself. That's my ultimate goal. So how do I get y by itself? Well, right here we have division. So what's the opposite of divide in the math world? Opposite of divide is multiply. So we are going to multiply by 3. Whatever you do one side, you got to do to the other. So times it by 3, and what do we get? Well, 3 over 1 times y over 3. This is part of the properties we talked about in last chapter. That's going to cancel out and leave you just with y. 8 times 3 is going to be 24. So right now you're saying y is 24. One of the best parts about these next examples is that you can check your work. You're telling me that y has to equal 24. So when I plug 24 in here for y, you can plug that in, divide by 3, add 5. So 24 divided by 3 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. Does 13 equal 13? Yes, it does. So therefore it does check. And 24 is your solution here. So 24 is what y equals. Another example, this is more of a word problem here. Go ahead and pause. Okay, so what do we know? The cost of a used car, we know, is an additional $25 more than whatever the new guitar cost, half of that. So how can we write that into the math world? Well, we know a used guitar was 120 bucks, and we know that's going to equal the 25 original dollars plus half of whatever the new guitar costs. So they use C for the cost of the new guitar. So I want to solve this so I want to get C by itself. I want to know how much the new guitar cost alone. So once again, here's your equation. First thing I recommend doing is drawing a line to the equal sign. And now we need to start simplifying. When we talk about order of operations, we've always said, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, okay? And we always work this way. When you start solving problems, you're going to find out we actually reverse up. So they can use the word like undo, adding and subtracting first, and then undo multiplication or dividing. So you're really working kind of opposite of your order of operations. We're going to work up. So it's important to know that you need to subtract 25 here first before you start multiplying or dividing things out. So once again, think other way. Work order of operations, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, backwards. So first thing I'm going to do, this says plus 25. So what's the opposite going to be? Minus 25. Whatever you do one side, you got to do the other. 120 minus 25 gives you 95. This is going to cancel, give you 0. 0 plus 1/2 c is just going to be 1/2 c. I need to get c all by itself. So what am I going to do? Well, I have 2 on the bottom. This is divide, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. Whatever you do to one side of your line, you got to do the other. 2 times 95 is going to give you 190 equals C. So a new guitar costs 190 bucks. You can punch in 190. So 1/2 times 190 plus 125 will give you $120. So that will check. You know that does work. So the question asked is, what is the cost of a new guitar? You can say $190. Another word problem. Go ahead and pause and read it. What do we know here? The shipping charge is $2.50 and I have $18.50 to spend. I want to know how many of these iris bulbs I can buy. So I know, take 250. I know out of my $18.50, I got my little piggy bank. I have to keep out $2.50 for shipping. So I want to know, if they're 90 cents a piece, how many of these little flower bulby thingies can I buy? Well, here's my equation. I can solve for B to figure that out. So first thing, draw a line through the equal sign, and we work backwards. So dear my, excuse please. That's probably more confusing. The other way. So it is just work backwards, undo versus work your order of operations. So first thing, subtract. This says plus 2.5. What's the opposite? We're going to subtract $2.50 from both sides, because whatever you do one side, you got to do the other. 18.50 minus 2.50 is going to leave you here with 16. This is going to cancel out and leave you with 90.90b. And multiplication is in here. So what is the opposite of multiply? Opposite of multiply is divide. So let's go back. We are going to divide both sides by 90. So this is just continued over. Still have my line through the equal sign. 16 divided by 90 is going to give you 17.7. So that tells you you can order 17 bulbs. Now, is this reasonable? Can you only order whole iris bulbs? Well, yes, that's true. So since 18 bulbs would cost $16.20, along with your $2.50 for shipping, means that's over the $18.50. So you can't buy 18, you can only buy 17. So that does make sense. When you're starting to solve these things, you're going to notice we said, what was the operation here? Multiply. What's the opposite of multiply? Divide. So it's important that you guys understand, if something says adding, then the opposite would be to subtract. If it said subtracting, the opposite would be to add. Same for multiplication. The opposite of multiply in the math world is divide. Opposite of divide is multiply. So those kind of go together. And you're going to see that correlation here throughout. Last example for today wants you to justify each step. So this is something a little different. Don't overthink it, because it is a little more simpler than what we think. So before we start, what's the first thing I recommend doing? Is drawing a line through the equal sign. So once you start drawing a line through the equal sign, we can see this is a plus 4. What's the opposite of addition? We said subtraction. So whatever you do one side, you got to do the other. So we have 4 minus 4, that's going to cancel out and give you 0. 8 minus 4 is going to be 4. This is what you're left with. It has C divided by 24. What is the opposite of divide? Multiply. So we're going to times both sides by 24, because whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. 24 times 4 is going to give you 96. And this is going to cancel out and give you just C. So C equals 96. You can actually, like we said before, take this, punch this in for C, and solve it, and you are going to see that it does check that 8 equals 8 on both sides. Therefore, 96 does equal C. Along the side, you can. This is the justifying each step. So really, you're just saying what's happening. What happened first here? You used the subtraction, then you simplified, and then what'd you do? Well, we multiplied, and then we simplified again. So not a whole lot to the justify each step. More importantly, it's just being able to solve your two-step equations throughout. That is all for today.